Hi, I'm Gretch. I'm a Dungeon Master for 5th Edition D&D. I've also been a host for many role-playing events in MMORPGs. This video is meant to kind of explain what role-playing is because you're probably interested in getting into it. Role-playing's become absolutely huge these days as D&D has reached critical mass far beyond what it ever was before, many times thanks to Critical Role and the various systems there and communities on Reddit and on TikTok. And of course, COVID helped with a lot of that, getting people interested in an immersive experience. So without further explanation, let's get into what you're here for. So what is roleplay? Well, roleplay is when you assume the role of the character and then play that out. It's a step beyond your character creator in whatever MMORPG you're playing. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to be using Final Fantasy XIV for illustrations and examples. One of the questions you want to ask yourself is, why do you choose a race other than human if there's no difference in stats? Why do you sometimes choose a gender other than your own if there's no difference in stats? And that's actually extremely common, by the way. You do it because you like the idea of playing a character. Be it a Y, sorcerer, or a metal Goliath. You kind of like the idea of something different and kind of taking on the role of or an image of something you like that looks really cool, acts cool. And so your role playing is a step beyond the character creator. You're going a step further in, you know. And don't get ahead of yourselves. MMORPGs are nerdy as hell as is. Role-playing is just an extra level of nerd. I know a lot of people like to... It used to be a popular thing years ago to try to look cool by insulting role players, but look, MMORPGs are nerdy as hell already. You know, with your gear score, your spreadsheets, your countless guides, running the same raid over and over to get a low piece of gear that's going to make your number go higher than the other guy next to you. It's nerdy as hell. So when you go into role-playing, what you're doing is you're taking your immersion in the game to a new level alongside other people, like-minded people who want to have fun. MMO role-playing is often misinterpreted by streamers. This is very common, and one of the reasons why I'm kind of making this video. Streamers and YouTubers are often trying to provide content that's entertaining to the people watching them, and so they tend to do things which may not necessarily represent what role-playing is like. They're not really on the inside there. They just kind of, for example, very common to see streamers go to Goldshire and Moonguard in World of Warcraft. They kind of say, well, let's take a look at what all the role players are doing. They're not role playing, they're shit posting and goofing off. That's what they're doing. Many streamers, it's becoming a popular thing with streamers to show their roleplay club that they decorated to get all their, the community playing there with them. But role playing is not just standing in a roleplay club doing bee's knees for an hour. Though RP can and does happen in those places. If you see a skimpily dressed cat girl doing push-ups on another person, that's not role-playing. That's not ERP either. I can talk about some of that stuff in a different video because I know it's a hot-button topic. Erotic role-play is absolutely massive, but I'll talk about that in a future video. But role-playing is actually more akin to writing. That's what it really is. So what it is many times the things your character says and the things they act out in emotes, custom emotes. Pointing and beckoning and that kind of stuff, waving. Those are very common emotes. Sometimes you don't have to be a role player. They kind of dink around, bow at somebody, give somebody a wave, do the slap animation. That's just having fun. But custom emoting is where the writing comes in. You see, in tabletop role-playing, the way you communicate and roleplay your character is through acting and speech. Or if you're online through like a voice channel on Discord, it's through speech. Well, in MMORPGs, it's typically done through text because that's your primary way of communicating in-game. Sometimes the community may have a voice channel for roleplaying if they want to do it that way, but most of the time you're using the tools available in the game to roleplay in the game, which tends to interpret to text. So typing things out, writing things out. That's a very common way in which they communicate. And in addition to that, unlike tabletop role-playing, it also helps form a greater disconnect between the player and between the character. And that's actually very important when it comes to role-play. It's something very beneficial that only this kind of role-play format has versus tabletop. Whereas tabletop role-playing is more akin to people having a conversation for interacting with their characters and the dungeon master. In MMORPGs, it's more akin to multiple people writing a story together. So writing is very much key to role-playing. And finally, role-playing is unlimited content. When you're done with the main story, when you've run the raid 20 million times, there's always role-playing because role-playing never ends. And there's a disconnect between the character you play on the game and the character you roleplay on. And that's kind of the thing, is you don't have to be a dragoon because your character is a dragoon. You don't have to be necessarily those things. When you're role-playing inside a role-playing environment with other role-players, you're not the warrior of light. And you don't want people to be the warrior of light. You can be anything you want that's in that game world. That's part of what makes it immersive and fun. You can be a merchant, a pauper, a sailor, a pirate, a mercenary, a spy, a hunter in the wood with just his bow and his pets. A lancer that protects the wildwood, the police force of a city, soldiers, Ishgardian dragoons, if you want to be. If you want to, you can be an adventurer or just a traveler, a poet, a singer, a librarian. I have a character that's a pop star. I have another character that's an engineer. And I'm not an engineer in real life. I don't know anything about mechanical engineering. And yet I can still have fun with engineering roleplay. After all, we got the steelworks in Ishgard, right? You use that creativity to go into that immersive environment to where it's unlimited content. Very much like PvP in the sense. Why do people still play poker for decades and decades? Because it's PvP. It's always different each time you play it. Why is it that the most popular games played on Twitch today are all multiplayer PvP for the vast majority of all of them? Because it's always different each time you play PvP. Same reason we all watch sports. It's the same game, it's always different. So it's unlimited content, and in much the same way, roleplaying is unlimited content. Each time you engage with someone, it's a different experience. Each time you go to another story, it's a different experience. Each time you go to a different event where the focus can be this thing or that, it's always a different experience. It's never the same thing twice, and you can just keep going forever with it. What are some of the differences between tabletop RPGs and MMORPGs? Well, to start it off, tabletop RPGs tend to be more short form. They tend to be things that you do sporadically throughout, maybe once a week or just sporadically throughout the month. Your relationship with that character tends to be on and off for those times in which you're role-playing. Whereas in MMORPGs, it tends to be very much more long form. Tabletop RPGs tend to be more rules heavy. There's lots of different rules books for D&D, aren't there? And replace D&D with any other system of your choosing when I talk about tabletop. Whereas in MMORPGs, you may have a lot of those things, but they typically are rules light. Reason being, whatever community you have in game pales in comparison to the prevalency of 5th edition D&D, right? So you want to have stuff that's easy for people to comprehend and understand so they can get in and have fun and playing with others. It's good to have rules, but you don't want to go overboard with it because no one's going to read 20 books worth of documentation before they start playing with you. Tabletop communities are typically small groups. They tend to be a number of players between 4 or 5 or 6. That's on the normal side for D&D and stuff like that. Whereas in MMORPGs, you typically have events with many more people than that. And you have potentially massive groups, which is a lot to handle. It's a lot to handle, and that kind of goes into what I'm talking about with rules light. Because you typically have a lot more people at your events in MMORPGs, you want to go more rules light so you're not wading in the deep end of the pool when it comes time to managing everyone mechanically. Tabletop roleplay is often more sporadically available, whether you do it throughout the week, every couple weeks, whereas MMORPGs, what's unique to them is that it's always on. And this kind of lends itself to the long form I spoke about earlier. MMORPGs are always on, and the role-playing is always on. You can always find people to role-play. In Final Fantasy, you just head to Ul'dah, and you can go, not just in the quicksands, you can go there, and some people go there for certain type of role-play, and real role-playing is done there too, But I mean, you can also go to the alleys, around the streets. I've been in random, spur-of-the-moment events that people have started. It's always on and always available. You can jump in and play the same character all day long. So what are some of the differences when it comes to the Dungeon Master? Well, the Dungeon Master in tabletop role-playing games is often necessary there, unless excluding some rare systems where you don't really need one. But the Dungeon Master is necessary for the game to even take place in tabletop. Whereas in MMORPGs, they don't necessarily need to be there. Now in communities where guilds have progressive events or events that are hosted by people, yeah, your Dungeon Master is essentially that person there. And of course, replace Dungeon Master with Game Master for whatever your preference is. I'm from 5th edition, so I love the term Dungeon Master. But many times your Dungeon Master is absent, especially if we're talking about open and walk-up social roleplay. You go down to the tavern to hang out with some other players. There's no Dungeon Master there. The Dungeon Master in tabletop manages the game. Whereas in MMORPGs, typically you have a guild leadership which manages the game. Solo arbitration. The Dungeon Master in tabletop is the solo arbitrator. They decide the rules, they call the shots as far as if this is balanced. Whereas in MMORPGs, typically it's a council that arbitrates. You usually have the guild master, vice guild master, any other trusted players that have been there, and any other trusted players that kind of arbitrate and make decisions on as far as rules, community conflicts, and stuff like that. Finally, the Dungeon Master is the game host in Tabletop, whereas the Dungeon Master in MMORPGs can many times be the event host. In fact, because of that, in many role-playing guilds, you will have your guild leadership being your Dungeon Masters, your event hosts. But also, in many progressive and heavy role-playing guilds, you will have many event hosts. And they're hosting their own time, their own event, and their own stuff that they're managing as the Dungeon Master for that time. They're the event host. And finally, I'd like to talk about common role-play community types in MMORPGs. Most common that you probably are used to seeing is open roleplay. This is known as your walk-up, your taverns, your cities. This is your always-on roleplay to where you don't have to be part of a guild. In fact, many role players are not part of any roleplay guild. This is what people very commonly see, the person walking through the city. Next common type is your social side of role-playing. These tend to be more of your themes. This is going to be things like nightclubs, like running restaurants and owning a bar and stuff like that, where usually you have some kind of management involved with restaurants. Then you have progressive communities. Progressive communities is where you're going to find your adventuring. You're going to have things that involve attributes such as strength, stamina, dexterity. You're typically going to have dice rolling to keep things balanced and keep things chaotic so that you don't have to fight with the dice, but many times you're going to see people whiffing everything and perfectly dodging them or trying to god mode others. Dice keep things balanced. They keep things on an even playing field, introduce a bit of random and curiosity to the mix. You tend to have loot in these guilds, through events and whatnot. You tend to gather a nice bit of loot, and some people really like the idea of building out a character sheet and fleshing it out with all the cool different skills and things that they've earned. All that stuff becomes part of a story you can tell to your friends. And then, of course, you have levels, or you can do either flat leveling or just promotion within the guild, a sense of progression, whereas you attend events, and the more you attend, the higher you get promoted and whatnot. And finally, and very common to progressive, are your heavy or hardcore role-playing guilds. Why are they hardcore? Because they're super dedicated. They have a heavy schedule. They tend to be multiple events throughout the day at many different times. It's not uncommon to see various role-play events throughout the day, most of which are 1 hour, sometimes 2 hours, and they're slotted according to a, whatever time zone the guild is using on a schedule, like a Google Calendar, and they all have to be coordinated at the start of every week. And what that does is that allows people opportunity to host their own events without conflict. And you tend to have multiple hosts in these guilds as well because there's so many things happen. When you get to this point of a hardcore role-playing guild, you tend to have large guilds. This is not just a small group of friends at this point. And you have to kind of resolve those conflicts with time. Some events are big, massive story events. Others may be crafting. Others may be training. We'll talk about all that stuff. I hope this video was helpful. I'm going to be putting out a couple more videos on this subject to kind of talk about, creating your own character and role-playing it, creating a role-play community, setting up your own system if you're interested, or kind of how they work. Talking about creating your own events and hosting them. Talking all about combat because that becomes a big thing you want to manage, and making your own skills and things like that. Crafting and loot systems and creating your own mechanics. So I have a good bit of things planned to kind of help explain and open it up to you. So it's good to just dive in, find a community, start working on your writing, because a lot of it's writing, your say, your emotes, your /say, your /emotes. Get used to that writing and stuff and find some friends to play with, or maybe start role-playing with a group of friends. Look, it's fun. This hopefully helps demystify some of it. And if you want to take it to the next level, get more into the detail and how these communities are made and managed and run and how you can create your own, I have more videos on that. Just kind of let me know if there's anything interesting, in particular about role-playing, you want to know more about. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks.